What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review David O. Russell's latest movie, Amsterdam, coming to theaters on October 7th. And not to worry, I won't give away any vital spoilers or plot details, but I should admit up front, I've really struggled with this video. This is about my 12th or 13th attempt at recording a review, and I'm having the equivalent of like YouTuber writer's block. And I almost bailed on doing this video entirely just because I was getting so frustrated because I'm having a really hard time even expressing to myself or articulating the problems that I had with the movie, because on paper, on the surface, I love everything about it. I'm a big fan of a lot of David O. Russell's earlier movies, and there's no getting around the fact that this movie might have the best cast assembled in years. It's got Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Chris Rock, Anya Taylor-Joy, Zoe Saldana, Mike Myers, Michael Shannon, Timothy Olyphant, Andrea Riseborough, Taylor Swift, Rami Malek, and Robert De Niro. And all of them are just giving this movie their all. You might even argue that some of them are giving a little too much. And then you have this exquisite photography by Emmanuel Lubezki, and he shot movies like Birdman and The Revenant. There's a strong case to be made for him as the world's greatest director of photography. I think he's won 3 Oscars so far. He knows what he's doing. And there are times where the actors, particularly Margot Robbie, they're so beautifully lit and so beautifully photographed, you can almost feel like your skull cracking in two and your brain exploding out like a mushroom cloud just because the beauty is so overpowering. But the movie doesn't quite work. It's easily David O. Russell's biggest movie. It's easily David O. Russell's most ambitious movie. And I really wanted to like this. You could almost say I was bought and paid for going in, having made up my mind in advance to like it, because I want to see more movies like this hit the big screen. It's got a giant budget. It's stylish. It's glamorous. It has incredible production value. It's not a franchise movie. It's a story geared toward an adult sensibility. It's kind of everything that film fans say they want to see more of. And so I would love nothing more than for this movie to make hundreds of millions of dollars and win all kinds of awards, because I want to see more studios getting behind these kinds of films, because these kinds of movies, these prestige dramas, used to be the bread and butter of Hollywood for many, many decades. That's how you build up movie stars, where like they are the feature attraction. It's not the franchise. It's not the comic that it's based on. It's not the video game it's based on. This is about the art and glamour of entertainment and cinema, and David O. Russell really gets that. But the screenplay of this movie is kind of a disaster, where the whole movie feels like overwritten and underwritten all at once, where it's very busy, it's very chaotic, there's a lot going on, but at the same time, it feels like really, really basic and simple. Like the movie could have been made the story could have taken place in 10 minutes if they wanted to, if not for all the kind of tangents and how prone David O. Russell is to getting sidetracked with a lot of opportunities for the actors to kind of show off how talented they are, or basically they're having to try too hard to justify appearing in such small, underwritten parts. And so he allows the cameras to roll for a long time, basically showing off this incredible cast. But all this energy and all this talent, it's not in service of the overall film or the final product. But the story, as you can gather from the trailer, is all about 3 very dear friends. They've been friends since World War I, where you have a doctor, a nurse, and a lawyer, and they become suspects in a murder mystery. And so they basically have to indulge in this mad dash around New York, trying to figure out why this person was killed and why it's being pinned on them. And as it turns out, the murder is just a small part of this much larger conspiracy that they're going to try and uncover. And as our heroes race around a lovingly recreated New York from the 1930s, it gives the film many opportunities to showcase the talents of people like Chris Rock, where they get their little scene-stealing moment, or Mike Myers, where they get their little scene-stealing moment. But once again, I think a big problem is that it almost at times feels overly theatrical, where the actors are almost trying too hard to capture period slang or period affectation, and it comes across as kind of inauthentic, where you never get that opportunity to really get immersed in the story. Whereas with movies like The Fighter and Silver Linings Playbook, there was not a gritty authenticity, but they just felt very true to themselves and the world that they were exploring, where this feels perhaps a little over stylized, almost like they're having so much fun with the world that they forgot to kind of rein it all in and give it a sense of like cohesion, where it all feels like it's Like, there are too many situations where all the cast all feel like they're acting in different movies and receiving different direction, and they're all different movies with a different style or tone, which makes all these scenes clash. Or not, I shouldn't say all these scenes. It makes a lot of these scenes feel like they're clashing. But to be fair, there were a lot of members of the audience who were applauding at the end, so I don't know if I'm going to be in the minority or the majority in my response to this film. But let me slow down and take my critiques one step at a time. And once again, this comes from a place of love where I want the movie to do well. I'm a big fan of the actors and the filmmaker, so it wounds me to criticize this movie, but it started off on the wrong foot with this really annoying Q&A that was really long and started late, where you had this moderator asking the most vapid, boring, insubstantial questions imaginable. And if you have an opportunity to ask questions of David O. Russell or Christian Bale or Margot Robbie or Rami Malek, tighten things up and come up with some interesting questions. I don't need to hear, like, what was the most fun part of the movie? Like, I mean, these are like basic questions for children, and this is not a movie for children. If people are showing up to watch a Despicable Me movie, fine, ask them those kinds of boring, vapid questions, but you don't need to start a movie an hour late for that kind of nonsense. At a minimum, put the Q&A at the end of the film. That way, you don't kill the momentum. When people show up for a movie, they're ready for entertainment, they're ready for an experience, and if you make them sit through an hour of bullshit, all that momentum and energy just starts to kind of, like air going out of a balloon. The whole room just deflates. But then the movie finally got underway, and it looked absolutely gorgeous. I can't remember the last time I saw a drama in IMAX, but maybe never, or maybe not since maybe like The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson or something like that, but that might have even been 70 millimeter. In any event, if you are a fan of Emmanuel Lubezki's photography, go see it in IMAX. It looks awe-inspiring, man. I could not believe how glorious and sumptuous and just beautiful the visuals were from the very first shot to the very last shot. And then the movie just kind of flies off the rails. It's so zany and kind of madcap that it never gets a chance to kind of settle down and get its footing. And it's trying so hard to be moving and affecting and stirring and humorous and heartwarming. It's trying so hard to do so many things at once. And for me, none of those emotions were really clicking. If anything, the movie was trying so hard to be like the greatest movie of all time, I almost kind of found it distracting. And I just wanted to say, look, I know all of you are wildly talented, but just settle down and focus. Because if you have the luxury of an actress like Andrea Riseborough in your film, give her a chance to shine. Her part's horribly underwritten. Or Zoe Saldana, she's incredible. Giant movie star. She's fucking Gamora from the MCU. Her part's horribly underwritten. And it just starts to feel like a waste of talent. You're like, well, maybe y'all should have just hired Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, and John David Washington, and then filled out the rest of the cast with unknowns. Although at this point, David O. Russell's got such a reputation for winning Oscars for his actors. I get it, where I'm sure there are actors out there telling their agents, even if I'm just pushing a broom in the background, I want to be in a David O. Russell movie. So if you have all these actors lining up who want to work with you, of course you're going to say yes. But holy cow, you have a great ensemble cast, but you don't have a great ensemble script. And there's an ongoing problem throughout the movie where the screenplay either feels completely expository, with actors basically explaining the plot to the audience, like, we're talking to this person for this reason to move the plot to the next stage, or it feels totally improvisational, where you can tell they're just letting the cameras roll. Like, David O. Russell's very famous for liking to kind of like hide under tables or lie on the floor, and he'll just start calling out lines to his actors and just letting them just explore the scene, explore the space on camera. And sometimes those lines come from earlier drafts, and sometimes he's just trying to stimulate them into something new. I mean, he's a real fucking director, and he is an expert at directing his actors. And I love how the actors appear to be so game and so up for just about anything he suggests. But after you've got all this crazy madcap improvisational stuff on film, when you're in the editing room, that's when you really got to focus on what you need. And I feel like it's almost like a novelist who's trying to write a great book, but instead of writing one great book, they're trying to squeeze 10 great books into one. And every time they have to make a hard decision about which characters or which stories get included, they decide to make no hard decisions and just include everything, where the movie or the story just starts to get kind of crushed under the burden of all the things that it's trying to do, where it's not doing any one thing particularly well, apart from just making all of us fall in love with Margot Robbie all over again. I don't know if she's ever appeared more beautiful than in this movie, and it's a great role. It's a fantastic part for her. And I think if you're going to point to one part of the movie that works best, it would be the friendship between John David Washington, Christian Bale, and Margot Robbie's characters, where they're just going all out, and you can tell they're just absolutely having a blast in the film. But toward the end of the movie, where the real conspiracy is being unveiled and the movie's kind of rushing headlong toward its conclusion, Margot Robbie kind of runs out of things to do. And at a certain point, I was like, oh my God, you've kind of forgotten that you've got this actress at the core of the movie and you're not giving her any lines. And I can't give away what's happening without giving away spoilers, but due to the time and place and the setting and some of the political tension in the world at that time, it just starts to feel like David O. Russell got distracted with this kind of ham-fisted, obvious ending, when what the movie's been about all along is about these three characters. And I think he lost sight of how they should always be front and center, where suddenly there's this new plot and new characters that are taking center stage, and it's very frustrating. So I really have no idea how this movie is going to be received, because obviously a lot of these actors have very passionate vocal fan bases, and David O. Russell has his fans, but he also has a lot of enemies. And let's just say his behavior behind the scenes has not always been that of a gentleman. So if people out there have real problems with him and just refuse to watch his movies, I get it. But when it comes to pure, raw writer-director talent, I think his talent speaks for itself, whether you're talking about his early 90s stuff like Spanking the Monkey and Flirting with Disaster, or his big comeback or hot streak when he basically made The Fighter, Silver Linings Playbook, and American Hustle all back-to-back, all in a row really quickly. And it just seemed like Hollywood had kind of fallen in love with them all over again. Amsterdam is not at the level of those three movies. Or at least I should say, in my opinion, as someone who just saw it under the best circumstances possible, if you don't include that ridiculous Q&A. But seeing this in IMAX, those are the best circumstances possible for a movie to make a positive first impression. And I just don't think this is David O. Russell putting his best foot forward. I think perhaps his reach exceeded his grasp, where he was trying to do so many things at once. He was trying to make his great, big, epic, character-driven, murder mystery, madcap adventure love story. And he was juggling one too many flaming batons at the same time. And I hate to say that, because my entire love affair with movies stems from a love of auteur-driven cinema. I like directors with a strong, dynamic voice. I like directors with a really strong, distinctive visual style. I like directors with longevity who keep giving us great movies one after another. And David O. Russell is an auteur. He's a dynamic force. He's uneven and he's inconsistent, but he's made a lot of good movies. And I have a feeling he will give us more good movies in the future. But at this point, I am starting to repeat myself, so I'm not going to bash this movie anymore. But what I will do is ask you a very important, vital question. A question related to manscaping, because Manscaped is the sponsor of my podcast, Wrong Reel. Does your happy trail look more like a happy highway? Does your bush peek out over your fence? If you had to even think about the answer, you need the revolutionary products from Manscaped.com. Success is when preparation meets opportunity, and Manscaped's Platinum Package will make sure you're prepared when opportunity strikes. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to Manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code WRONGREEL. That is WRONGREEL in all caps. And I should mention that inside this Platinum Package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Ultra Premium Body Wash, Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner, Ultra Premium Deodorant, Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant, Crop Reviver Ball Spray Toner, that's a big hit with everybody, and the Anti-Chafing Boxers. So I hope I've persuaded you. Or if you're just a fan of my YouTube channel or my podcast and want to lend some support, this is the way to do so. But hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. But I can't thank you enough for listening to my rambling, incoherent, kind of frustrated, non-committal rant about this movie. I'll be very curious to hear about everybody else's responses to the film. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.